It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Appreciate you listening. The phone number remains, as always, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Gary and Eric, they return next Sunday night, Monday morning. A little bit about me. You can follow me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show, especially on X. I've got a lot of stuff that I've posted this evening, and I host a morning show on Super Talk 89.7 WTN in Nashville, Tennessee. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to fill in. There's a lot to talk about tonight. Kamala Harris. I'm going to get the awkward out of the way right away. So she has now come out with a plan to try to woo black men, to try to get black men to vote for her. Now, in the last couple of days, she has come out. You've got Barack Obama. He is out now on the campaign trail, berating black men, trying to figure out why exactly it is that black men, for whatever reason, don't want to vote for Kamala Harris. One of the things that's going on right now, though, is that the media is out there and they're trying to figure out why is it, beyond black men, but why is it that men in general, they don't want to vote for Kamala Harris? And they're sort of apoplectic about this whole thing. There was on MSNBC, you may have heard this already, but an analyst by the name of Mara Gay, she came out and she says that young men are in crisis and need to get therapy because all they apparently do, these young men, is listen to Joe Rogan, and they're being converted to fascism. Have you heard this audio? And the left, I'm going to broaden this out. The left wonders, why exactly is it that young men are fleeing their side of the aisle?
You know, I think men are in crisis, actually, in this country. I think that plays out different ways. And not all men are in crisis, of course. And not all men are just at home listening to Joe Rogan, being angry or being recruited to fascism. Some just need therapy, like we all do. I go to therapy, that's great. But I think we need to have a real conversation about that rather than allowing this kind of drift toward this faux masculinity that we see Donald Trump evincing.
I think she needs to go do more therapy. Now, number one, I listen to Joe Rogan. I support Donald Trump, and I'm not drifting to fascism. So they come up with these lines. They come up with these ideas. They come up with these narratives. And we've seen this at play for the last several weeks now, where you've got Kamala Harris and you've got Doug Emhoff and you've got Tim Walz, and they're trying to convince the American people that if you're not voting for Kamala Harris and you're a man, then you are some sort of a sexist or misogynist. And so now they're trying to reach out to young men because Kamala Harris is losing men. The Democrat Party, in my opinion, is losing men. Well, number one, you might want to stop calling us fascists. That's number one. Number two, you might want to stop commenting and saying things like, well, all they do is listen to Joe Rogan all day, which we don't. You know what men do? I would say to MSNBC analyst Mara Gay, men go out and they support their families. Men do everything they can to support their children. Men do everything they can to keep a job and pay their taxes and make sure that their parents are taken care of as well. That's what real men are doing. I'm sorry if the folks on the left can't really seem to relate to that or understand that, but that's what a lot of men are doing. We're not just sitting around listening to Joe Rogan all day, and I do realize that they're talking specifically about younger men, but I'm going to broaden it out. But here's the other thing that I would say to people on the left. If you're wondering why it is that younger men don't really care about Kamala Harris or the left, it's because you're the ones that created the term toxic masculinity. You're the ones that are constantly demonizing men in America today, especially white, straight Christian men. Let's also not forget that there are some on the left that just you consider men predators, and you'll demonize them at every turn. At every turn. That's what you do. And, of course, you've got the folks on the left who always called Donald Trump supporters Nazis, and, of course, Donald Trump is Hitler. A lot of those people that you're calling Nazis, you folks on the left, they're men. So, I don't know, why don't you stop insulting men and see where that goes? But to sit here and say, MSNBC analyst Mara Gay, to sit here and say that men are drifting towards fascism and all they do is sit around and watch Joe Rogan is just not only fundamentally wrong, but it's also fundamentally insulting. I said a year ago, keep it up, Democrats. Keep it up. Because what's going to happen is the more that you continuously demonize folks like me and like men and young men especially, they're just not going to vote for you. They're not going to support you. They're not going to support your weird ideas. They're just not. That doesn't make them sexist. That doesn't make them misogynist. That actually makes them sane. But I don't believe that they need therapy. We're just going to go out, we're going to go vote, and we'll see where it goes. But that's why, at least to me, the Democrats are not reaching men, especially young men. Then you have this audio bite that will live in infamy. This is Kamala Harris a while back.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories, and they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
All right, so that is one that we should be playing often if you're a conservative. Just keep that on your phone. Keep the video on your phone, and every time there's some sort of a young person that is deciding whether to vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, pull that out. Because Kamala Harris thinks that you're dumb if you're between the ages of 18 and 34. She says these things, and she's done these things. And the Democrats have said these things, and the Democrats have done these things as well. And now they're wondering what in the world happened to their younger adult support, especially among men. Now, Kamala Harris. She has come out with an opportunity agenda for black men. I'm just going to give the 5 bullet points. Provide 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 for black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. So 1 million loans for black entrepreneurs and others, whatever that means. Number 2, support education training and mentorship programs that lead to good-paying jobs for black men, including pathways to become teachers. All right. Number 3, protect cryptocurrency investments so black men who make them know their money is safe. Another one, launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. And finally, legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry. So I guess the question is, will these things actually work? Now, I've got a comment on almost every single one of these. But here's the deal. When she talks about black men and the job market, black men and all men are competing with all of these illegals to find jobs. That is on Kamala Harris. Oh, by the way, the other thing. This feels really cynical. You know why this feels cynical? This feels really cynical because this woman, Kamala Harris, has been a senator for 4 years and a vice president for almost 4 years. You're 3 weeks from an election. You see that your support among young black males is falling, so you come out with this. So this just seems really cynical. And if young black men out there read this and they think, well, she's just now offering this after being in the Senate and also the vice president's office, 8 years total. Now, 3 weeks before the election, she's coming up with this. I wonder if I can trust Kamala Harris. And by the way, leaving out the part about whether or not she could actually get this through Congress. You want to give $1 million, a million loans, 1 million loans for black men to start a business? Now, to me, and I understand these things do already exist, but I don't like anything based solely on skin color because it does feel divisive, it does feel wrong, it does feel racist, and it does feel like it's pandering. That's what it is. And I'm kind of curious how they came up with that 1 million loans. Like not billions of dollars in loans, just 1 million loans of up to $20,000 for black entrepreneurs and others. And I'm kind of curious as to what that and others actually means. But whatever. Here's another one. Launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. Well, this might get a little awkward. But you know what really impacts black men and their health? Sadly, homicide. Today, homicide is the leading cause of death among young black men. In about 80 to 90% of the cases, the black victim was killed by another black person. So how about, I would say to Kamala Harris, you, because you're a prosecutor and you're so proud of your time as a prosecutor, how about you, as a prosecutor, fix the crime problem by enabling and supporting and funding the police and not allowing bad guys to get out of prison early? The soft on crime policies, they are not working, and it's leading to more violent cities. In those more violent cities, black men are getting killed. So, yeah, to me, if you want to launch a national health initiative that is focusing on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men, can we talk about violence? How about getting fathers back in the home? So these kids have a loving and supportive father in the home that will give them a better future. Because personally, I think one of the biggest problems in our society is a lack of fathers, a lack of fatherhood, and a lack of support for the nuclear family. And I do understand that we can't always have perfect. But how about we work on that? You know what else would help black men? School choice. You've got all this support wrapped up in the teachers' unions. Well, to me, if you give black men and or black children and all children school choice, you give them a better education. The other thing she wants to do, legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry. So ironic, since she herself put so many black folks in jail for marijuana back when she was a DA. And finally, again, I will repeat, you've been a senator for 4 years, a vice president for almost 4 years. Where were all these great ideas when you were really in power? And not that you're not in power now, but guess what? You are vice president currently. You could do these things right now if you wanted to. But you're waiting until you're running for president. Vernon Jones, a guy who used to be a Democrat, now a Republican, used to be a state lawmaker in Georgia, he had this to say about Kamala Harris and some of these ideas.
But as a black man, he did everything but address us. What he did, he berated black men, he rebuked black men.
Talking about Barack Obama.
He even scolded black men, primarily because we will not fall in line and vote for Madam Lock Up Her Brother, Kamala Harris, because
Madam Lock Up Her Brother, Kamala Harris. That's funny.
that's her record. As if black men are too stupid that we can't vote our self-interest, what's best for us, our pocketbook, our families. As if we've been immune to the past 3.5 years, as if we don't know that gas prices have been higher under Kamala Harris, food prices higher under Kamala Harris, interest rates on home mortgages higher under Kamala Harris, and runaway borders under Kamala Harris. But you know what? That's what the liberal white Democratic Party did. They dispatched Barack Obama out there to whip black men back on the plantation to vote Democrat. And you know, President Obama, he meant a lot to black people, but he didn't do anything for black people.
There you go, Vernon Jones. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. It's Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. As the seasons change, so does truck maintenance. Cold weather can affect everything from your batteries and your air brake system to tire inflation and fuel lines. Make sure your tires are ready to roll through winter with the following maintenance tip. Underinflation is a leading cause of tire failures during winter because when the temperature drops, so does your tire pressure. Check your tire pressure before every trip to ensure they're properly inflated and to get the best footprint and traction on the roads. Conduct daily visual tire inspections to make sure you haven't picked up harmful debris on the road. Find a trustworthy tire service provider today so you'll be ready as the seasons change.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. I played this audio bite in the previous segment. Let me play it one more time, and there's a reason I'm going to repeat this. This is MSNBC analyst Mara Gay.
You know, I think men are in crisis, actually, in this country. I think that plays out different ways. And not all men are in crisis, of course. And not all men are just at home listening to Joe Rogan, being angry or being recruited to fascism.
Guess who Kamala Harris is going to sit down with? Joe Rogan. It appears, anyway. Colin Rugg tweeted this out. I'm sure this is everywhere. Kamala Harris is considering sitting down with Joe Rogan for an interview, according to multiple sources who spoke with Reuters. Harris's campaign officials reportedly met with Rogan's team this week. The development comes as Harris is desperately trying to reach more male voters as she continues to struggle with men. Well, it's kind of funny. We just talked about that in the previous segment. And, we have, talking about Colin Rugg, I love his Twitter feed, his X feed. Just this week, for example, Tim Walz went on a hunting outing to impress men, which received mixed reviews. He couldn't load his shotgun. Have you seen I think I tweeted this out. I think I sent this out on X. He's out there, and people are saying that he does. He looks like Elmer Fudd, Tim Walz. And he's out there hunting wabbits. And he can't load his gun. Now, I understand that, if you're not all that experienced, it can be a little complicated. But he's been out there bragging about his ability to shoot a gun. And he can't even load it. But I love this. I love that Kamala Harris is now having to crawl to Joe Rogan. And also, news that she's going to be on with Bret Baier as well from Fox News.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here indeed, in for Gary and Eric. I'm here all week. I love this story for so many different reasons. America's new millionaire class, plumbers and HVAC entrepreneurs. Private equity is pouring money into skilled trade small businesses. Next thing you know, you're running an empire. I know a guy who started an HVAC company. And when he started, this was, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years ago. And when he started doing this HVAC company, it was like on a wing and a prayer, man. He didn't have any money. But he wanted to work for himself. He wanted to be his own boss. He wanted to accomplish the American dream. So he goes to school and he becomes a, HVAC technician, and he works for a couple of companies, and he realizes that he doesn't want to work for anybody else. These other companies, they weren't really running the business or treating the customers the way that he thought that they should be treated. So he started his own business. He couldn't find anybody to work for him, and he was having a really hard time finding people to simply come work for his company. But he was finally able to find 1, 2, and a couple more technicians. And he worked his tail off. He worked hard. He worked weekends. He was running the company. He was going on appointments and installing HVAC units, fixing, maintaining, the whole thing. He started that company with a couple of $1,000s. This man now runs a $15 million company. And he was a air conditioning and, heating repair guy. And that's the whole point. That's the thing that I absolutely love about this stuff, is that I know a guy. I know a guy who does not have his GED. This could be a question. He doesn't have his GED. He didn't graduate high school. He dropped out of high school. I don't exactly know why he dropped out of high school, but he dropped out of high school. And so this guy is really good at welding. He makes the most amazing things as a welder. But he doesn't have his GED. He doesn't have his high school diploma. And because of that, he can't get certified. Is that right? Should you, and I don't know if this is a state thing, but should you have to have a high school diploma to be certified? I'm kind of curious, because I know that there's a lot of people that are up right now, and maybe you are a certified whatever, certified welder, certified HVAC, whatever it is. But the difference between a welder, for example, that makes, that is certified, that guy can pull in, I guess, $80,000 a year, something like that, if you're certified. But if you're not certified, if you don't have that high school diploma, you make a lot less. And I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm trying to help this guy because I like him a lot. I'm trying to figure out why exactly it is that states require a GED in order to become certified. And I'm starting to think that maybe it's a money grab, because to become certified, you have to have that GED. And so to get that GED, if you didn't graduate high school, there's all kinds of classes that you need to take, and there's things that you need to do that cost money. And so my very low-informed opinion on all of this, because I haven't really thought it all out and I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I just don't understand why you force people who don't have a high school education, but they might be really good at something. For example, like welding or electrician, those kinds of things. Let them go to school, let them go to the trade schools, and let them get certified even if they don't have that GED. Because does it really matter in the long run? And I very well fully admit that I may be missing something here. So, because I'm a radio guy, I've been doing this for 35 plus years. So you folks that are, tradespeople, and I don't know if this is a thing that is in one state or another state, the laws are different in different states. I believe that they are. But what does it matter if somebody has a GED if they want to become certified to fix an air conditioner or, go to, I don't know, plumbing school, whatever it is? But I love this story from the Wall Street Journal. Few businesses are as vital to their consumers and customers as local plumbing, heating, or air conditioning companies, especially in places like Tucson, Arizona, and some of those other places. They say that right now the trades are hard work, but a lot of today's society, they're picking up a shovel, and a lot of people these days, they don't know how to do these kinds of trades. And so these kinds of trades are really important. My brother, by the way, went to HVAC school. He spent a couple of $1,000s on HVAC school. He's been doing this for like 40 years now, fixing air conditioners, and he makes a really good living. But I think there's a couple of different things here. Number one, you're talking about jobs that a lot of people don't want to do. They don't know how to do it. That's number one. But number two, this gets you away from the colleges. And we all know what's going on in colleges. We all know that in colleges, there's a lot of indoctrination going on. It is incredibly hostile. Goes back to the last segment. Colleges right now, very hostile to white, young Christian men. And so maybe those white, young Christian men say, you know what? I don't need to go to college to be criticized and browbeaten and berated and demonized. I'm going to go to trade school. And I'll be able to pay for it with, a few or several $1,000s, depending on what it is. But I don't have to go to some stupid college and pay tens of thousands of dollars just to be demonized and get a degree that ultimately I may or may not be able to use. But you go to plumbing school, you go to welding school, you go to HVAC school, you learn a specific trade, you learn how to fix stuff, you learn how to install stuff, whether it be cars, whether it be plumbing, whether it be electrical, and you can have a job that is, number one, perhaps recession-proof, and number two, you're not paying a ton of money to learn how to do it. And a lot of these people that go into these trades, they already know a great deal about what they want to do. They already know a lot about the trade that they ultimately want to utilize as their life's work. They say that you've got all of these private equity companies that are investing in these trade companies. HVAC is a big one. They say the growth of the investment from private equity into these HVAC and plumbing companies, their growth marks a major shift, taking home services firms away from family operators by offering mom and pop shops 7-figure and 8-figure paydays. It is a contrast from previous generations when more owners handed companies down to their children or employees. The wave of investment is minting a new class of millionaires across the country, one that small business owners say is helping add more shine to working with the tool belt. I love this. I'm not going to bore you by reading the entire Wall Street Journal article, but I love this. I have such a immense respect for the trades. My wife's family. My wife's family, you know what they do? They're a bunch of plumbers. And they make good money, I'm here to tell you. There are days when I think, you know what? I know that I'm 56, but is it too late for me to learn how to become a plumber and, actually make a really good living? Because, radio. Anyway, the phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-90-RED-EYE. Coming up at some point in the show, very soon, there's a number of things going on with Kamala Harris. Number one, she is being accused of plagiarism. That's right. She's being accused of plagiarizing her book. And when you look at the page-by-page comparison, it is really damning. That's number one. Number two, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton went out, and he is campaigning now for Kamala Harris. You've got Joe Biden and now Bill Clinton as well. Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama, all three have been out campaigning for Kamala Harris, and it's almost like they want Kamala Harris to lose. I realize that is a bit of a conspiracy theory. We'll explore that, but none of what they're doing is making a whole heck of a lot of sense. All of that and more. The phone lines are open. I would love to know your thoughts on the whole why do you need a GED if you're going to get certified question that I have, 866-90-RED-EYE. Right now, though, this is Joshua in Pennsylvania on Red Eye Radio. Hey, Joshua.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. Go ahead.
I know it's a little bit about different from what you were talking about, but I have two questions. Why is nobody talking about the fact that in 2014, Biden and Obama passed a law where the news and everybody can propaganda the United States citizens? Before that, it was illegal. If you've
are you talking about?
I
just want to hey, Joshua, I want to make sure I know what you're talking about. Are you talking about where Obama, right before it wasn't the election had already happened, but where they said that all of the different agencies could more easily share information?
Yes, but there are a lot of propaganda where before that they weren't allowed to lie to us. They had to actually, like news stations had to report actual factual stuff, or there could be repercussions. Now, since 2014, there is no repercussions because you can actually legally lie to the American people and nothing can happen. So if you've noticed all the elections since then, there's been problems with them. Well, we need to repeal that, and we also need to repeal the Reaganomics part of it where corporations could pass taxes onto the American people. So anytime any political person is telling us, hey, we're going to raise taxes on corporations, not the middle class, well, because of Reaganomics, the corporations are just passing it on to the American people anyhow. I have a master's degree in accounting. I've learned all this through my studies and everything. Mm-hmm. And it's like, holy cow, this is crazy. Until we repeal that, I'm sure most people have heard of the right people saying, oh, it's the right to work tax. There is no such thing as a right to work tax. That tax was originally created as a right to employ tax. Mm-hmm. It was to be taken out of the profits of corporations after all the,
Well, here's I want to. That's fine. Economic policy is great, but here's my question though, because I'm kind of stuck on what you said before about propagandizing the American people with a law that was passed in 2014. I've been in talk radio a long time, and I've been in media a long time. I'm trying to figure out what law you're talking about. I don't. I mean, maybe the audience is screaming at me. Well, it's the law from 2014, Mandis. I don't know what that is. What is that? Can you? I'm on X at Dan Mandis Show. Can you send it to me?
Look it up. I'm not on X. I'm sorry. I listen to your radio station on occasion on my way home.
Got it.
And I was just like, you know what? I got to call.
Well, I'll tell you what. I gotta run. I appreciate it. I'll find it, and I guarantee you somebody has already sent it to me if it exists. But as far as the media lying to the American people and there not being any consequences, there has been consequences. We'll talk about that straight ahead. I do appreciate the call. 866-90-RED-EYE. My name is Dan Mandis, and for Gary and Eric, this is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. We've got all kinds of things coming up in the next hour, including Bill Clinton absolutely blows it out on the campaign trail for Kamala Harris. Wait till you hear what he said. I mean, there are people that are saying that he slam dunked accidentally on Kamala Harris by something that he said about illegal immigration. So we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Barack Obama. We're going to talk about also what you think about my query, my question regarding requiring GEDs to become certified in the trades. I think that's an interesting conversation.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Appreciate you being here. The phone number is 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. In the previous hour, a caller, forget his name, but he totally stumped me. Because he called up and he was kind of talking about how he was frustrated because Barack Obama, back in 2014, signed a bill, made a decision that made it legal for the government to basically disseminate propaganda into America. I was trying to figure out what in the world was he talking about. Well, back in 2013, 2014, Barack Obama adjusted the Smith-Mundt Act. Now, what the Smith-Mundt Act is, and this is going to be very short. What the Smith-Mundt Act is basically a law that does not allow any propaganda that is disseminated by our government to be broadcast here in America. And so Obama, we have, I guess, I didn't even know this, but we have an entire agency, the U.S. Agency for Global Media. So you got like these networks, if you will, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, and these broadcast outside of America. What Obama did was he loosened the restrictions so that some of this propaganda could actually be, some of this could be broadcast in America. And that's what Obama did, and I guess people were upset about it. I really have no idea. But the caller seemed to be, his take on it was he was upset because he said that what Obama did was basically legalize lying to Americans. And I guess I was just confused at the point that he was trying to make. But, I mean, you tune into MSNBC, you tune into, CNN. They lie to Americans every single day. And it's I mean, they were doing that many, many, many years ago. Unfortunately, media does that. And it is especially prevalent today. So to me, I mean, this whole Smith-Mundt Act, I mean, it's whatever. But for me, the caller was saying that he was frustrated because, the loosening of the Smith-Mundt Act allowed that lying to take place. So now, MSNBC and CNN and some of these other places that are liberal-leaning, they are now allowed, I'm going to air quote that, to lie to Americans. And he wants that to be, I guess, against the law. The caller wants it to be against the law. Well, part of my frustration is, and I totally get what he's saying, because you do have media outlets that know that they're lying to the American people. They know that they're lying. When they say that Donald Trump, for example, that Donald Trump supports that Project 2025, that is his agenda, And they know darn right well that Donald Trump has said over and over and over again that is not his policy. But they say it anyway. The anchors will say it. The people who analyze it will say, analyze for the station, MSNBC or CNN, they will say it as well. And they know that it's a lie. They'll also say that Donald Trump favors a national ban on abortion, when Donald Trump has said ad nauseum that no, he does not support a national ban on abortion. But they continuously lie to the American people. But they've got freedom of the press and they've got freedom of speech. But I get what I get what he's saying. I totally understand it. I get frustrated too. I will watch MSNBC, for example. There's a reason why people call it BSNBC, where they bald-faced lie right to your face. But then you say, okay, well, here's the deal. They're lying to my face, but so does Corinne Jean-Pierre. I call her cringe. Corinne Jean-Pierre. The White House press secretary, she lies to the American people every damn day. You have politicians that lie to the American people every single day. I mean, right off the top of my head. How long did they say that the border was secure? And everybody knew that it wasn't. The gaslighting was incredible. So that's number one. Number two, remember the story about how the Haitians were whipped by the Border Patrol? And that lie was perpetuated by the Biden administration for months. And they were lying to the American people. And so that goes way above and beyond the Smith-Mundt Act. We have politicians, and yeah, we do. We have major news networks that lie to the American people. And they gaslight the American people. Now, I don't know, perhaps I should have asked the caller, well, now that I kind of understand where he was going, but okay, so what do you want to do? You want to throw these people in jail? You want to throw Corinne Jean-Pierre in jail? Because the slippery slope there is that, okay, well then, in a world where you've got Tim Walz and Corinne Jean-Pierre and others on the left wanting to ban misinformation, well, okay, who decides what is mis and disinformation? Because if we were going to start banning misinformation, we literally could not have a White House press briefing. And so it is up to the American people, it is up to you to read and to research and to understand what is going on in your world so that you know when the White House press secretary or MSNBC or CNN or ABC or whoever, CBS, whoever is reporting and you think, I don't really know if that's true. You need to go on to Google. You need to go on to DuckDuckGo or whatever these things are. And you need to find out the truth. And so when the caller said something to the effect of, you know, they lie and there's no ramifications, there's no consequences for that, well, there actually is. You know what the lowest rated, I think it still is, you know what the lowest rated network is amongst, you know, the major ones? MSNBC. Do you know why MSNBC is the lowest rated? Because they do lie. And everybody knows it. So they lose viewers and they lose trust and they lose credibility. That's what happens. So they do have consequences. CNN's doing horribly. Why does CNN do horribly? At least with MSNBC, you can say, you know what, MSNBC, they don't brand themselves like CNN does. CNN still to this day brands themselves as some sort of an all-news station, and it's not. CNN will brand themselves as an all-news station, but they're far more opinion than they are news. And so for CNN, in my opinion, they actually literally what they do is they lie within their branding. At least with MSNBC, we know what they are. They're a propaganda machine for the left. I mean, that is what they are, to me. CNN is a little more fair and balanced. And to me, Fox News, and some of you folks out there will guffaw at this, but Fox News, at least to me, is more balanced even than the networks. But for me, the more you look at where the media landscape lies today, that is why it is so incredibly important that we do have the independent voices on talk radio. It is why we really do need to have the independent voices on social media. This is why it was so critically important that Elon Musk buy Twitter, turned it into X. Because while you have all of these folks that are out there that will blatantly lie to your face, whether we're talking about the CNNs of the world, the MSNBCs of the world, the networks, we do have independent voices on social media. We do have independent voices on talk radio that will call out those that perpetually lie. And then some people will listen to me and say, oh, Mandis, you're lying. About what? What would I be lying about? But everybody's got, it's sad to say, but everybody's got their own version of the truth. Everybody's got their alternate facts or alternative facts. But for me, how I approach my show, how I approach my career, and I've been in journalism and talk radio for, over 35 years. I want to drill down into the truth and then give my opinion on that truth. And if it's a Republican that's lying, I'll call out the Republican. It's what I love about Gary and Eric. They will absolutely call out anyone who is lying. And that's what I really like about Red Eye Radio. When I drive in for my morning show in Nashville, I always listen to Red Eye. I always listen to Gary and Eric, which is always why I'm so honored to be able to do this. But when you look at credibility and when you look at voices that you need to trust, let me ask you a question. Do you trust Martha Raddatz? Do you think that Martha Raddatz is somebody who is a trustworthy journalist? I don't. Because she'll sit there and she'll lie to your face, in my opinion. Remember that piece of audio that we had, was it yesterday? Today's Tuesday, right? So where you had Martha Raddatz, where she had J.D. Vance on, and she tried to, sort of fact check J.D. Vance and say, oh, no. Tren de Aragua, they're not taking over apartment complexes.
A handful of problems. Do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be.
And so the incessant, fact-checking by people like Martha Raddatz, it drives me nuts. Because on the one hand, they're trying to be the protector and the purveyor of truth when the reality is they're actually lying to you. Now, in that particular case, when they're talking about the apartment complexes, when she's trying to say that Donald Trump was lying about that, he actually wasn't. There's actually a brand new story out today where you have the people who own those apartment complexes I'll get to this. The people that own those apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, they're now on the record. And they have said that the gangbangers who have taken over our apartment communities, they are beating up our employees. And we've gone to the local politicians. We've gone to the local police. They refuse to do anything. And the media won't touch this story with a 10-foot pole. And so when you've got the likes of Martha Raddatz and she's out there saying, oh, this isn't really happening, it's fake news. It's not fake news. But if we were going to start jailing journalists for lying to the American people, which is not something that I recommend, because then you get into that slippery slope situation. You have to be smart enough to be able to understand what they're reporting and understand if it's right or if it's wrong. You have to be able to disseminate information to your friends and to your family and say, no, Donald Trump is not akin to Adolf Hitler. And here's why. Number one, he's one of the most pro-Israel presidents we've ever seen. But don't let facts get in the way of a good attack line on the left. So anyway, I probably went on a little too long about that. Whatever. 866-90-RED has a phone number. 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Independents with carrier authority should be mindful that negotiation strength varies as the week progresses. Typically, the highest rates across major segments are paid for loads negotiated on Sundays, and the highest volume of loads for all segments is seen on Mondays. Also, the weekday that tends to be the best for flatbed negotiations, yielding the best rates. Owner-operators tend to have less negotiation strength on Tuesday, which shows the lowest weekday spread between brokers' offered rates and actual paid rates. Broker offers tend to rise by Wednesday as the end of the week is in sight. This day also seems optimal for the 3 o'clock hustle, so-called for its reliance on that afternoon time of day, when brokers are getting nervous, to improve negotiation strength. Stay mindful of this system to maximize your revenue. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Yeah, I got to tell you, the as you watch and you consume as much media as I do, you get somebody like me going off on the media, man, and I'll just go on forever. But, you know, I think the reason for that, the reason why I feel so passionately about the media and the disinformation that the media has been spreading is because I used to be a journalist. I mean, I used to be a reporter, a news anchor, and all of these other things, and I really wasn't very good at either one. But I take the responsibility of journalism really seriously. I mean, I do. And that's why I'm so sickened by what I see is going on in the world of journalism today. Because journalism can literally change lives. Journalism can help a greater good by rooting out the truth in times of corruption and so forth. But the whole thing, I mean, journalism, it's like it, and I'm not a journalist anymore, I'm a talk show host, but by and large, journalism doesn't really exist anymore when you start talking about what is going on the likes of, you know, MSNBC and so forth. It just doesn't. And again, that's why I do believe that Elon Musk will always be a hero of mine because what he did for the First Amendment, what he did for conservatives by purchasing Twitter, changing it to X, and allowing all conversation when most of us are still banned or shadow banned or whatever on Facebook and some of the other social media platforms, but we have our say on Twitter. And I love that about Elon Musk because you know what? When it comes to conservatism, at times I feel a little outmatched because the libs, they've got the networks, they've got CNN, they've got MSNBC, and thank God for Elon Musk. That's all I can say.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
There's part of me that is thinking that the Democrats actually don't want Kamala Harris to win. And I'm watching Bill Clinton, where he's out there and he's campaigning for Kamala Harris. And he's at some sort of a park, and he gives like a 20-minute speech. And he actually spoke the truth. I want you to listen to what he says. I've got a bunch of audio from Bill Clinton here. Number one, I don't think Bill's doing too well. I don't know how old he is, but man, he sounds really old, and he doesn't look really good either. But I want you to listen to what he says very closely, because basically what he does, either accidentally or on purpose, is he seems to throw Kamala Harris right under the bus.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen.
Well, okay, but the problem with what he is saying is that he's trying to throw Donald Trump under the bus, but he actually throws Kamala Harris under the bus. I saw a headline, friendly fire. And so whether or not Bill Clinton meant to put out the truth about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and their failed immigration policies or not, that is the impact. Some are saying that Bill Clinton was trying to blame Donald Trump, not realizing that when this guy crossed the border, the guy that killed the co-ed from Georgia, it was back in, I think, 2022. Before Donald Trump, and I'm going to air quote this, before Donald Trump torpedoed the bipartisan Senate immigration border protection deal. Because that's what Bill Clinton was trying to do. Bill Clinton was trying to blame Donald Trump for the lack of vetting for the guy that killed the Georgia co-ed. But that's how off he is. I'm going to go through the timeline in a second, but this is how Fox News reports this whole thing. The former president attempted to blame Donald Trump for the death of 22-year-old college student Laken Riley. Of course, you remember her name. She was murdered while jogging at the University of Georgia in Athens, saying that he'd stymied a bipartisan bill on the border. Oh, there's a problem, though. The alleged killer was encountered by CBP on September 8th of 2022 after entering near El Paso, Texas, and basically he was paroled and released for further processing. In other words, it was a catch and release. So they didn't actually do any vetting at all with this guy. And so when Bill Clinton says, well, if they'd just done some vetting with this guy, that girl maybe still be alive. Yeah, but the problem is it was their open border and it was their policy of catch and release with no vetting. That was their policy, not Donald Trump's. And by the way, that I'm going to, again, air quote, that bipartisan Senate deal that Donald Trump supposedly torpedoed that was all about border protection, which it wasn't. But that wasn't killed until this year. This guy was coming in 2022. He came in 2022 when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were doing nothing about the border. There was no laws to keep people out. They just kept coming on in. No vetting, catch and release, remain in Mexico gone, no wall being built. Deportations come to a big-time halt. And Joe Biden, of course, saying during the primary, come on in. Laken Riley was killed in February of this year, 2024. That bipartisan Senate immigration bill that the left always talks about didn't actually come about until this year, and it failed in May. The guy that allegedly killed Laken Riley came through our wide-open southern border and then was paroled and released in 2022 after Joe Biden opened up the border with all of those executive orders. But well before Biden and the Senate got to work on that Senate bill. So Clinton was just way off. I'm going to play that audio bite for you one more time as people are calling out Bill Clinton for basically making Donald Trump's argument for him. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are taking this audio bite or this video and they're saying, they're editing on, I'm Donald Trump and I approve this message.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
He's right.
But if they're all properly vetted and that doesn't happen.
All right, there you go. Bill Clinton. Oh, he had a lot more to say. Bill Clinton did.
She's the only candidate who has actually endorsed a bill that would hold down immigration in any given year to a certain point.
Right.
And then make sure we gave people a decent place to live. We didn't divide people from their children. And we did total vetting before people got in.
So that is Bill Clinton. Now, a couple of things. I'm sorry, but it's not the job of our government to give millions of illegal aliens, and I'm going to air quote here, a decent place to stay, a decent place to live. Is that my job? Is that your job? No, it's not. You know how many Americans here in America don't have a decent place to stay right now? Millions. Yet you got Bill Clinton out there saying that it's the job of the American people to foot the bill for all of these illegal aliens and give them a decent place to stay. Give them cash cards. Give them phones. Give them clothing. Give them free food. Give them free whatever. And that's the problem. One of the fundamental problems right now that the Democrat Party has is that they're putting illegal aliens over the American people. They're putting Ukraine over the American people. That's what they're doing. And he's still over there talking about vetting. There's no vetting that is going on, Bill. And the only reason that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are now trying to get some sort of they were trying to get the border deal passed in the Senate is because they knew that this was a losing issue for Joe Biden's reelection campaign. They've been a disaster on the border literally since day one. And also, by the way, as Bill Clinton is saying that she's the only candidate in this race that supports legislation, ... Well, I would remind the former president that Donald Trump supported the House immigration bill, H.R. 2, that would have truly kept our borders safe. So Bill Clinton is wrong on that as well. So you see what I'm saying when I say I don't really know what purpose Bill Clinton is doing, by the way. Did you see that Bill Clinton walks into a McDonald's and the lady behind the counter thought he was Joe Biden? Yeah, it's pretty funny. Here's more from Bill Clinton.
Trump killed the bill. The bill was being written by senior Republicans in the Senate, and he killed the bill. Why?
So why did Donald Trump kill the bill? Now, I'm going to say this. If you accept that Donald Trump killed the bill, if you accept that, then here's why it did. Here's why he did kill the bill. It basically endorsed Joe Biden's catch and release policy. So that would have continued on. It didn't do nearly enough to secure the border. The funding of sanctuary cities and these NGOs, non-governmental agencies, that facilitate all of the border and immigration chaos, it would have funded those NGOs. It basically allowed the Biden administration or the government to allow all of these illegal aliens into our country until the Border Patrol encountered 4,000 illegals daily for 7 days. And then it went on from there. I mean, I don't want to relitigate the entire thing, but if you remember the conversation, you remember that there were a lot of issues with this particular piece of legislation, which I, at the time, called it a piece of you-know-what. It would have required taxpayers to fund the deportation attorneys for kids under the age of 14 and for those people, those adults who are deemed incompetent, and on it goes. I don't need to go through all of this again because most folks know that Congress, the House of Representatives, had H.R. 2 that was really good for border security and really would have helped facilitate legal immigration as well. But Chuck Schumer in the Senate refused to even bring it to a vote, put it into committee. Nothing. It sat on Chuck Schumer's desk. That was H.R. 2 that the Republicans passed out of the House. The Senate came up with the piece of legislation that I just described. And you know what else is interesting? You know what I love about all this? Is that you have all of these Democrats who are always talking about, Donald Trump separated children. He put kids in cages. You're familiar with all of those talking points. Well, here's the crazy thing. What about the hundreds of thousands of children that have disappeared here in America under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? They're literally gone. Nobody knows where they are. And so if we're going to hand-wring over the children, let's absolutely hand-wring over the children, like the hundreds of thousands that are missing because they were smuggled into this country. And now these kids that are nowhere to be found, they're working in the slave trades. Some are working in slave labor. Some are working in dangerous jobs. We can't find them. They've been sex trafficked. Most of these kids that were separated from their families under Donald Trump, they reconnected with those families. But can we really say that about these kids under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? No, we can't. So I would like the next person, the next, whether it's J.D. Vance or Donald Trump or any Republican out there that has to go on CNN or MSNBC or whatever, and they start talking about Donald Trump separating the children from their parents. Which, by the way, you do know the reason why they were separated is because the parents were being charged with a crime and the kids couldn't be put in the same jail facility as their parents because they're in there with other criminals. And Obama put people in cages. Just saying. But the next time that a The next time that a conservative is asked about Trump separating kids from their families, I would like that conservative, that Republican, to turn right back around and say, well, can we talk about all the kids that are missing from their parents that have been smuggled into our country and now they're nowhere to be found? Would you like to talk about that? Because conveniently, the Democrats forget about that. They don't want to talk about that. And the reason why that is because that would make their candidate, Kamala Harris, look bad. Because they don't really care about the children. They only care about whatever narrative they can concoct. Generally, it's in the form of a lie to try to get an attack line on Donald Trump. And their allies in the media will play right along with it. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. It's Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. James Carville has lost his mind. I don't have enough time to play it now, but coming up in the next hour, I will play this this audio from James Carville, and where he is trying to connect Donald Trump, this big speech he's going to give at Madison Square Garden, and James Carville somehow is connecting Donald Trump to being a Nazi because he's giving a speech at the Garden.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
So I had the Uber ride from hell the other day. And I want to tell you about it because I think it's a bigger point. It makes a bigger point. Dan Mandis here for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. The other day I had to go to New York, and I had to take an Uber from work, from the radio station, where I do a morning show, 99.7 WTN at Super Talk, and I host the morning show there here in Nashville. I've been doing this for a long time in this town. So this Uber driver pulls up. He's going to take me to B&A. He's going to take me to the airport. I was not in that car more than 2 minutes before he really awkwardly kind of segues into this conversation about politics. Now, realize I talk about politics 4 hours a day. The last thing I want to do when I get into a car is talk about politics. But this Uber driver, and he had his car didn't have any hubcaps, and he had a dent in the side. The guy looked like he just, got off of the, Bernie Sanders commune. And he says, yeah, I don't really need to drive an Uber, but, it gets me out of the house, and I don't really have to watch the news then, because we're in a very divided time. I said, yeah, we are. Got an election coming up. And then he starts in with how Donald Trump is certifiably insane, and he just launches. And as I'm listening to his tirade, and I don't know if he knew who I am, if he knew who I was as I'm in the backseat of his car, but he is just launching all of these really nasty and by and large lies about Donald Trump. And so I'm not taking the bait. I'm trying to get some work done on my phone and answer some emails so that I can get to my plane and just relax. But among the things that he said, oh, yeah, Donald Trump, he called the dead military veterans suckers and losers at that cemetery. He wouldn't go to the cemetery because it was full of suckers and losers. And, he called the white supremacists fine people. And there's some other things that he threw out. And I basically said, well, you sound like you watch a lot of MSNBC. And he says, hell yeah, that's all I watch. And I told him that I thought that was sad. He says, you sound like you watch a lot of Fox News. I said, yeah, I do. I watch Fox News. I read the New York Times. I read the Washington Post, which, by the way, I do. I read all of those. I watch CNN, and I like to have as broad base of a information pipeline as I possibly can. But this guy was just, I didn't really engage with him too much other than, when we finally pulled into the airport, I threw down like 2 minutes of talk show host thunder. I said the weakness of Joe Biden led to 2 wars and Ukraine, billions of dollars and open border, illegal immigration. It was basically my 2-minute elevator pitch as to why Joe Biden sucks. And I said it with some force. And much, I'm sure much to his dismay, I did not leave him a tip, which was somewhat controversial on my radio station in Nashville because some people thought that I should have left him a tip. I said no. And I'm not leaving him a tip because of his political beliefs. I'm not leaving a tip because he didn't do his job appropriately, because I don't know where an Uber driver thinks it's a good idea to start speaking not only politics, but be very angry and vitriolic about it. So, no, I didn't leave him a tip. One guy said you should have given him like 2 cents. You should have given him a 2-cent tip. But the point is that here's a guy who has this hatred for Donald Trump. But by his own admission, he only watches MSNBC. And if you spend any time on MSNBC, you know that they have a lot of fake news. And it's always so interesting because when you meet somebody like that, who, and again, I don't really know if he knew who I was or not. My wife swears that this guy is what we like to call in the radio industry, in the talk radio industry, a hate listener. Like he listens to hate. And then here he is picking me up right there at the radio station and maybe knew. I have no idea. And quite frankly, I really don't care. But just to show you the kind of insanity that does air on MSNBC, this is James Carville. And I don't know if you know, but Donald Trump has now booked Madison Square Garden. He's going to give a huge speech at Madison Square Garden, right there in the heart of Democrat power, New York City. And this is going to be a very big deal. And so James Carville, of course, you know that he's a Democrat operative, and he's on with Jen Psaki, and he starts going down this rabbit hole of this is a sign that Donald Trump, yet another sign for James Carville, that Donald Trump is a Nazi.
We had General Flynn say that the gates of hell are going to rain on Trump's enemies when he wins. We had General Milley say that he's a fascist to his core. We heard Trump on Fox this morning said he was going to use the military to round up his political enemies. Trump has announced that he will be giving a speech at Madison Square Garden on October the 27th. Please Google Madison Square Garden, February the 10th, 1939, and see what happened there. They are telling you exactly what they're going to do.
I think James Carville is really losing it. I do. So, of course, everybody's Googling what happened in 1939, February 20th of 1939. A Nazi rally took place at Madison Square Garden on February 20th of 1939. So, in what world can you, with any amount of credibility, say that just because Donald Trump is giving a speech at Madison Square Garden, where back in 1939, they had apparently a Nazi-driven speech or rally, that means that Donald Trump is a Nazi? Like that is like the insanity of my Uber driver. It lacks all reasoning and critical thought. Because, there's been a lot of other people that have given speeches at Madison Square Garden. I think Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech at Madison Square Garden. Countless musicians have played at Madison Square Garden. So when you have, and I'd be willing to bet, I haven't done it, but if you do a search as to all of the speeches that have been given at Madison Square Garden, I guarantee you that there's a lot of Democrats. I think John Kennedy. Didn't John F. Kennedy give a speech at Madison Square Garden? I think that he did. So Carville is he's losing his ever-loving mind. Like he really, I don't even know what else to say about this. This entire segment on MSNBC with Jen Psaki and James Carville, it does show you how absolutely insane some of these folks on the left are. And he continued.
They're telling you we're going to institute a fascist regime, and the press and all the Alan Dershowitz wannabes out there. But James, she should have gone to the Al Smith dinner, really. She doesn't do enough long-form interviews. Now, I'm so sick of these people. The entire Constitution is in jeopardy.
So it's kind of funny, though, how he says the entire Constitution is in jeopardy. Really? Because last time I checked, it was Tim Walz, a Democrat, Kamala Harris's running mate, and a Democrat governor who wants to get rid of the Electoral College. They already got rid of the border, at least for 3.5 years. Suddenly they found it once it was time to get elected. Once they decided to run for election, they said, we might want to do something with the border and protect our nation's sovereignty, which they really didn't do, but whatever. But you know what I'm saying? It's like James Carville is like, well, they're going to institute a fascist. Can I ask you a question of James Carville? James, if you're listening, if you're up late this evening, maybe drinking a little bit, hitting the sauce, give us a call. I would love to talk to you. Because if Donald Trump was going to institute a fascist state, wouldn't he have done it the first 4 years that he was in office? That's the amazing thing. If Donald Trump was going to jail journalists, if Donald Trump was going to institute a fascist society, he would have done it in his first term. But you see how unreasonable they are. You see how frothing at the mouth they are. And you see how they don't make any sense. And I like talking to reasonable liberals. I like speaking to people who are willing to just simply have a conversation. But part of what's going on is James Carville and the left, they are panicking. And that's what we talked about last night, friends, where they're panicking. They are literally panicking. You know why they're panicking? They're panicking because everywhere they turn, Kamala Harris is losing. There's a big liberal podcast. I forget what the name of it is. But it's a really popular podcast. And they came out, one of their hosts came out and finally had to admit that Kamala Harris is losing. That Kamala Harris is not doing well. And so instead of going through, policy initiatives, instead of talking about where Kamala Harris is right on the issues and Donald Trump is wrong on the issues, James Carville just go straight to, oh, really, Donald Trump's going to give a speech at Madison Square Garden? He's a Nazi. I mean, honestly, they just sound so unhinged. And by the way, if you want to go down that road of governments going after private citizens and politicians going after their political enemies, I mean, we could talk about Joe Biden. We could talk about special counsel Jack Smith. We could talk about all of these attorneys general who have been going after Donald Trump in these various states. We could talk about, was it Colorado, if I'm not mistaken? Was it Colorado that tried, in another state, they tried to bounce Donald Trump off of the ballot? So if you really want to go down that road, I mean, we can. But as we often see with the Democrats, they always accuse people of doing what they themselves are actually doing. You see that time and time and time again.
The Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas have totally green-lighted the idea that you could use the military to round up your political enemies. And the whole, I am fair and more truth-teller than anybody else, caucus is making a giant fool of itself right now.
Wow. James, after, how long is that? A minute 14. That minute 14 of complete and utter nonsense. And James Carville says that he is more of a truth teller than anyone else. You keep telling yourself that, James. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Appreciate you listening. Just played that just off the hook. I mean, this guy, well, I think that's actually, I think off the hook is I think for young kids, I think that's a good thing. So, Out of His Mind. The Out of His Mind commentary by James Carville, where Donald Trump has, announced that he's got a big speech at Madison Square Garden right there in the heart of, Democrat territory, New York City. And Trump announced he's going to give a big speech at Madison Square Garden. And I played you the audio just a moments ago where James Carville said, well, back in whatever it was, 1930, whatever it was, where they gave a big Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden way back in the 1930s. And so you got Carville now, saying, well, that's what Trump's going to do. He's going to install a bunch of fascism. Fascist society is what he's going to do. And, because he's trying to link Trump with this speech from 36. And so my first thought when I saw that was, well, JFK, Roosevelt, and Ted Kennedy all gave speeches at Madison Square Garden. So I don't know where Carville's going or what he's trying to say, because he really does have a hard time expressing himself. And I know that he is a god among Democrats because, they'll worship anything but God. But for James Carville, he just doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. I think it's because they are really worried about what's going to come next. Because they're going to have to realizing that, yeah, you know what? Donald Trump is winning this thing. By the way, I said something earlier I want to expand upon. I had said, because I was talking about Bill Clinton, right? So Bill Clinton is out there and he is campaigning for Kamala Harris. And I said, it's like the Democrats don't actually want Kamala Harris to win this election. And the reason I say that is because they're making these mistakes that, quite frankly, are just bizarre to me. Are they bizarre to you as well? Because when you've got when you've got Barack Obama and he is out there browbeating and castigating black men for not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris, and that really did spark a big reaction. It only inspired a lot of, as far as I can tell online, that has really inspired a lot of black males to say no. If I was on the fence, they're saying, if I was on the fence with Trump or Kamala Harris, you coming out here and calling me a sexist or a misogynist if I don't want to vote for Kamala Harris, that's going to make me vote for Donald Trump. So the Democrats are making, just, to me, it's almost like really bizarre mistakes, like they're trying to throw this election. I know that they're not. But who in their right mind would think that that's a good idea? To come out and berate the people that you're trying to get to vote for your party. And then Bill Clinton, I played you the audio earlier where, and I can't play it again now because I'm right up against the break. But, you know, Bill Clinton comes out and he says that the illegal alien, the guy that came and killed that Georgia college co-ed, had that guy been properly vetted, she would still be alive. Well, the vetting should have been done by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Clinton was trying to throw Trump under the bus, but what Clinton managed to do was he threw Kamala Harris under the bus. And everybody's jumping on that this morning. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3330.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Weird thing happened last night at the Trump rally, where apparently there were a couple of medical emergencies. And somebody just sent me a note on Twitter, which, by the way, or X. You can find me on X at Dan Mandis Show. You want to send me stuff, that's the place to send it. But apparently, a couple of things are going on. So Trump was having a rally, and there were a couple of medical emergencies. And it took a long time for these medical emergencies to be dealt with. And so Trump ended up playing some music. And so now there's video of Donald Trump out there on the socials. And it's being portrayed as Trump is just standing on stage, unhinged and listening to music. Which, no, what he was doing, they're leaving out the part about the medical emergencies. And Trump has done that before. Now, the question is, people are debating this online. Were there really medical emergencies, or were they trying to disrupt Donald Trump's rally? Here's how this is Forbes. Former President Donald Trump's Pennsylvania Monday turned into a more than half-hour-long music test, where the former president slowly swayed and danced while the crowd slowly streamed out of the venue, prompting immediate mockery from both Vice President Kamala Harris and her campaign. Trump town hall, they say, was interrupted by two separate medical emergencies in the crowd. I mean, what is Donald Trump supposed to do? You got two people that have either fainted or whatever's going on. Is he supposed to keep talking? He's always done that. He's always paused when there's a medical emergency. That's the right thing to do. And I know that you'll be shocked when I say this, but shame on Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for mocking Donald Trump for pausing the event while somebody or two people were being taken care of. But again, the question is, were these really medical emergencies, or were these plants by the left? So I don't know. Apparently they played YMCA, of course, by the Village People. I think they played Rich Men North of Richmond, which is that's a great song. I think that Donald Trump apparently at some point, the thing just ended, and Donald Trump left the stage. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know if this was something that was planned or plotted, or just a couple of people ended up, needing medical attention, and Trump played music. But for Kamala Harris and the Mirror, listen to this headline from. This is why I have such distaste for the media. Trump plays favorite music to baffled crowd as unhinged ex-president sways silently for 30 minutes. Well, no, there was a medical emergency. And if there's a medical emergency, then Trump has to, be quiet, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the policy on that would be. Anyway, there's other things going on. Let's get to some of the stories I have. The phone number is 866-90-RED-I, 866-907-3339. Tren de Aragua. They are in the news again. I know it's getting old. Some people are telling me it's getting old. But it's an important story. The reason why it's important is because people are saying that Donald Trump has been lying about this. Well, there's a big update to the story from what we had last night, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. We all remember what happened with J.D. Vance and Martha Raddatz, where she was just obliterated by J.D. Vance. Remember this moment.
A handful of problems.
Do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be.
Yeah, so now there's an update to the story. A fed-up landlord in the Denver suburbs has shared a bloody photo. By the way, I put this on my X feed. If you want to see it, go ahead. A fed-up landlord in the Denver suburb of Aurora has shared a bloody photo of one of its workers after the man was allegedly beaten to a pulp by members of the brutal Venezuelan prison gang, Tren de Aragua, for refusing to let them stay in a vacant apartment they had taken over. So this poor guy works at the apartment, and he discovers that this vicious Venezuelan gang has taken over some of the apartments. And so he walks in. They try to offer him a bribe of $500 to forget the whole thing. He says no. And so then he ends up getting beaten up, bloodied to a pulp. And they ended up threatening his family as well. Oh, but this isn't really happening, right, Martha Raddatz? So this Brooklyn-based company claimed that the gang effectively stole the entire apartment complex, and more than one, right out from under it by threatening employees, and tried to extort it for a cut of the rent in exchange for being allowed to keep operating the properties. So basically what they do is they go in, they take over, and then they go to the ownership, the people who own the apartment complex, and they say, we'll let you operate, but you've got to give us a cut of the funds. Local cops and the FBI were asked to help stop the extortion, but refused to step in. Now, why is that? Why would maybe some of you police folks can tell me why that would be. Why would the Aurora police and the authorities not help this apartment complex? Why is that? Is it because word might get out and that would make Joe Biden and Kamala Harris look bad? I don't know. Is it because of political correctness? Is it because of some weird woke reason? I don't know. That seems bizarre to me. Or maybe they're just scared of Tren de Aragua. Because remember, one of the things that came out of Denver was that they were basically given permission to shoot and kill police officers at will. So the CBZ management said, gangs have taken control of several of our properties in Aurora, Colorado. The company wrote in a thread on X. In an attempt to discredit this fact for political purposes and avoid governmental accountability, some have spread false information about our situation. The company, which owns and had managed the properties, posted multiple surveillance videos from its apartment complexes, including the footage of the beatdown of the employee late last year that it said proved the gang has a foothold in Aurora. Well, we know that there's a foothold in Aurora. We know that Tren de Aragua has that foothold not only in Aurora, but in America, in various cities across our country. So this is a very big deal. And so remember part of what's going on. Part of what's going on is if Martha Raddatz and some of these other journalists, Kirsten Welker is the other one, if it turns out that Donald Trump is right about the apartment complexes being taken over by the gangs, well, then they are proven as liars. And clearly they don't want that. So they'll continue with the lie. And I'll tell you, remember, part of the conversation has to be, remember that for the mainstream media, and I know that I'm going apples and oranges here, but remember when they discredited the story about the laptop from hell? Remember that whole thing? I know I do. They only admitted that it was a legit story until way after the election and Joe Biden won. And as you know, if the laptop was proven to be legit, which everyone knows that it is, and if the media had done even a modicum of their job and looked into the laptop and did report that it was a legit story and it was not Russian disinformation, that would have looked bad on Joe Biden. Clearly, that would have looked bad on Hunter Biden. And as we all know from independent investigations and analysis, Donald Trump would have won the election if it was not for the media suppressing the laptop story. So when it comes to this story about the Venezuelan gangbangers taking over these apartment complexes in the Denver area and Aurora, Colorado specifically, well, media is not really looking into it, it doesn't seem to me. Oh, I know they spoke to the Trump-hating Aurora mayor. But it seems to me like for these apartment complexes and for the owners of these apartment complexes, they're coming out and they're saying that this actually is happening. Do you think the media, do you think Martha Raddatz, do you think Kirsten Welker, do you think the CNN and MSNBC, do you think they'll come out and say, you know what, our bad. We said this wasn't happening, and it is. And this apartment company, they're actually saying that it's true. And they're actually saying that they turned to the authorities. They literally asked the authorities for help. And the authorities refused. And whether it was because of woke reasons or because of they were worried that these guys were going to shoot and kill the local law enforcement if they tried to help the apartment company, I don't know. I don't really understand it. But what I do understand, and what I know you understand, is that the media continues to lie about this story. There are people on the ground that are saying that this is happening. And so Martha Raddatz and Kirsten Welker and the New York Times and the Washington Post, they can all sit here and fact-check Trump all day long and twice on Sunday, right up until Election Day. But I just don't know how many people are taking these media outlets serious anymore because they've been caught lying so many different times. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red-Eye is the phone number, 866-907-3339. That's where we find Jamie calling from Reno, Nevada. Jamie, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? We were just chatting on Twitter. Congrats again on the Marconi.
Well, thank you.
I was just thinking about the whole thing with the Venezuelan gangs. Like, remember back when Trump sued Hillary about election interference, and he invoked RICO, and apparently RICO can be invoked under civil statutes somehow. Mm-hmm. Why couldn't somebody who's not the FBI or not these local law enforcement pursue some sort of civil action against these gangbangers under RICO?
Yeah, I mean, Jamie, that does make a lot of sense, and I appreciate the phone call. Here's the thing that I would say, though. I mean, you could talk about extortion, you could talk about racketeering, because these gangs, I mean, they do forms of both of those. But at this point, I would just like these gangbangers to be charged with robbery and assault. I mean, right now, it seems like they're not being charged with anything. And that's a problem in all these Democrat-run cities across the country, is you have, whether these are, people that are from here or migrants that have come from, or illegal aliens that have come from other countries. The bottom line is that when they commit crimes, for example, you can steal as long as it's under $1,000 in some areas. People are getting insulted. Cars are being stolen. Cars are being, carjacked, and people are breaking into, other people's homes. And if they're migrants, they're literally allowed to get away with it. And, of course, by and large, people are, generally speaking, in these cities, they are getting away with it. And it's sickening. And it is destroying our country. I mean, you look at some of the cities out there that have these soft on crime policies. They're all being destroyed by the crime. They're all being destroyed by what is happening, and that's why so many people are leaving those cities. Whether we're talking about Chicago, whether we're talking about Los Angeles, New York, basically anywhere in California, people are fleeing. And I guarantee you people are leaving Aurora, Colorado as well.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. I'm in for Gary and Eric. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk, 99.7 WTN. It's on from 6 to 10 Eastern. And you can find out all the information at 997WTN.com. We were talking earlier, and I want to get right to his call because he's going to confirm what I think we all know. But we were talking in the previous hour about what is going on with Tren de Aragua in Aurora, Colorado. And you got local people there that, for whatever reason, the local authorities don't want to do anything about this Venezuelan gang. Martha Raddatz and Kirsten Welker, they're consistently fact-checking J.D. Vance and others who say that there is a problem with this Venezuelan gang that has now infested Aurora. So Dan is calling from Aurora. And Dan, thank you very much for calling. So do you live in this particular area?
No, I don't. I don't live in the particular area, but I can absolutely attest to the fact that this is happening here. It's hard to believe it's happening in America, but it's happening right here in Aurora, Colorado. They have taken over 3 buildings, and it's been going on for months, and you can lay it right, the fact that nothing has been done about it, you can lay it at Governor Polis's feet. He is a radical left-wing lunatic, and Colorado actually is a dark blue state. But what people don't know is in the outlying smaller cities, it's almost 100% conservative. But we're outnumbered by the big cities in Denver and Aurora, which actually are one and the same basically, and Colorado Springs. So but this is happening. These guys are doing it. And you know what I was thinking? If the Hells Angels did it, they would come and take them off. But Polis has given them a stand-down order, just like he did during the riots of 2020. They did millions of dollars of damage in downtown Denver and even some in Aurora. And we call him here Punxsutawney Polis, because he's like the groundhog. His shadow was not seen. He was nowhere to be found when all of this was going on.
Dan, let me ask you though. So, is the reason why the local authorities? Because in the previous hour, I was talking about the company that owned these apartment complexes. They say that they have notified the local authorities in Aurora, and they just won't do anything. And so, do you think that's by order of the governor, or is there something else going on that I'm missing? Why won't the authorities do anything?
It is the order of the governor, and the mayor in Aurora is a coward, and he's backed down. Originally, he kind of let it out that it was really happening, but he got chastised by the bigger guns in the corrupt Democratic Party, and he had to change his tune. But the police are doing absolutely nothing. This is happening in America. I went to the Trump rally on Friday with a couple of girls, and we had to stand in line for 6 hours. But we finally got in, and we got to see President Trump, and what an honor. I mean, he's the greatest president of my lifetime, and I was really glad that we got to see him and listen to him and know that he's real. And we always see him on TV, but when we left that event center, we go out, and here they did have him in one area, but there were rioters. These left-wing lunatics, I don't know, a couple hundred of them, and we had to walk right by them. And the police, to their credit, were stopping them from doing anything. But they were screaming at us and calling us racist and calling us slumlords. See, that's the way
they're calling you slumlord.
Well, that's the way they think of these apartment owners. Yeah. They think that they are slumlords, and they're taking advantage of these migrants. They're 100% on the side of the migrants. They're not on the landowners' side, or they're not on American side.
Let me ask you, Dan. Have you lived in Colorado your whole life?
Yes, I have. Except 4 years I was in the Marine Corps.
Well, I appreciate your service, and it's really sad that your hometown and your state has gone to disarray. I mean, thanks to Democrat rule. And unfortunately, we see this time and time again. I spent, a year in Colorado Springs in my radio journey. I spent a year in Colorado Springs, and I spent several years in Denver. And it's such a beautiful town. It's such a beautiful Colorado is an incredible state. Denver is an incredible town. Unfortunately, though, you know, when Democrats come in, they literally just, it's like a virus. And the cities are just destroyed. And it seems to be getting worse. And I think everybody would agree that the Democrat Party right now is clearly not what it used to be. You know, Joe Biden always likes to say, well, the current Republican Party certainly isn't your father's Republican Party. It's not your grandfather's Republican Party. What would you say about the change? I would say to Joe Biden, I would say to Democrats, what would you say about the change in the Democrat Party? Because the change in the Democrat Party, I've never seen anything like this before in all my life. That's why, you know, I was going back. People are finding me on the socials, and they're sending me their own stories of Uber drivers from hell. I was telling you earlier in the broadcast about my own experience with an Uber driver who had me held captive in his car, and he took 20 minutes to tell me everything that was wrong with Donald Trump and everything that was wrong with Donald Trump's policies. But the thing was, none of them was based on any facts. None of it was based on any facts. And Gary and Eric, they say this all the time. Just like Dan said, the Democrats cannot win on the issues. So the only thing that they have left is personal attacks and identity politics. That's it. And the guys are absolutely right. There are times when I'm genuinely curious how today's Democrat can wake up and look him or herself in the mirror and not recognize the problems that their party has created. Because you can't deny what's going on. You should hear this audio. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Because it is audio of Kamala Harris, and she's talking to some guy, and they had a moment where they were able to all agree that Donald Trump is a racist because of the things that he says. Do I have time to do this now? I don't have time to do this now. I'm going to go to the break, and then coming back, I'm going to play you some audio. It's basically it's considered the latest word salad from Kamala Harris, but it's actually not. The word salad part is like 15 seconds. But the bigger, broader point that Kamala Harris is trying to make is so easily defeated, and I'm going to do it coming up next on Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90 Red Eye, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. All right, so you remember when Donald Trump said this? He's speaking in Detroit, and he says this about Detroit.
You want to know the truth? It'll be like Detroit. Our whole country will end up being like Detroit if she's your president. You're going to have a mess on your hands.
All right, so that was, again, that's Donald Trump. He's in Detroit, and he's deriding, some people would say, Detroit by saying that it's going to be, the rest of the country is going to be like Detroit if Kamala Harris wins. So now I want to play for you. Kamala Harris is doing a podcast, and they start talking about how Donald Trump is always criticizing, wait for it, these black cities. And listen very closely to what they say about the things that President Trump says and why he says them.
So in 2020, he talked about voting in Fulton County, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit. There was a partial recount of Wisconsin, only in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. The comments that he just made about Detroit basically being a living hell.
Oakland, D.C., Chicago.
Pretty damn ad.
Come on.
Pretty good damn ad y'all dropped out. I actually liked it. Jamel Hill and I talked about it. But, again, he's singling out cities where there are significant African Americans, and that's who he's talking about.
Yes.
Black people.
Yes. There's this whole, I talked with somebody once who said, if you just look at where the stars are in the sky, don't look at them as just random things. If you just look at them as points, look at the constellation, what does it show you? So you just outlined it, Roland. What does it show you? That the cities that he picks on in terms of black population or black mayor or both.
All right, so that is Kamala Harris, and that whole part about the constellation, people are saying the points in the constellation and all that, that's the word salad that people are talking about. But the bigger point is that they're saying that Donald Trump only picks on black cities. That's what he's saying, which, first of all, he's got a lot of things to say about California, and that's a white governor. But that's beside the point. So she says, the former president only bashes black cities. And then they referenced, again, Donald Trump talking about Detroit.
You want to know the truth? It'll be like Detroit. Our whole country will end up being like Detroit if she's your president. You're going to have a mess on your hands.
All right, so here's my question. Is Donald Trump being racist, or is he telling the truth? Because here's the deal. If they're going to use, and Kamala Harris did with this podcaster, if they're going to use Detroit and Trump's comments regarding Detroit as the example, well, here's the thing. Detroit is a mess. Detroit's poverty rate is 3 times the national average. Child poverty rate is at 43% in Detroit. Unemployment in Detroit has been well above the national average. You know that Detroit has been ranked as the neediest city in the United States by Wallet Hub for several years in a row. In other words, I'm not just making this stuff up. I mean, friends, this is a quick Google search. Only 55% of the average working age adults were participating in the labor force in Detroit. Low graduation rates, inadequate access to transportation, youth violence, a history of ecological disregard has literally made the city of Detroit hazardous. There's a food pantry in Detroit. It's a close suburb. That food pantry has been busted for blight and public health issues. And a big story last year in Detroit, Detroit's population, it's going down. And as Detroit's population goes down, it is challenging the vision of Detroit's revitalization. So if you're Kamala Harris and you're this podcaster, a couple of black people, And you're going to sit here and you're going to complain that Donald Trump only picks on black cities, and then you use Detroit as an example. Well, there's a reason why Donald Trump is talking about Detroit, and it has nothing to do with the race of the people or the skin color of the people in that city. It has to do with what all those people that are living in that city are having to go through. And so let me pose this question. What's more racist? Talking about the horrific conditions that black people are forced to live in cities like Detroit. And by the way, a lot of the city leaders, and I'm air quoting, the city leaders are in Detroit as well. But all these people in Detroit, and they're having to live through reprehensible conditions. And I just told you what they are. Trump is talking about this from a perspective that he cares. He is talking about this like, I want to make this better for these people that are living in this city. That's what Donald Trump is saying. It's out of a voice of concern. But the Democrats, they're happy as anything to allow people who are black to live in these cities that are filled with crime. They are hazardous. Detroit has literally been called hazardous. Low graduation rates in school, inadequate access to transportation, youth violence. And the Democrats all across the country are okay with these black people living in these cities. And so which is worse? Donald Trump talking about how he wants to make these cities better for the people who live in that city, black or otherwise? Or the Democrats who are just fine with low-functioning cities, and the poor people that live in these cities, they've got nowhere to go. And the Democrats don't want school choice because they want they want these people trapped in these poor schools, these poor-performing schools. So I love how they're saying, oh, Donald Trump is talking, smack about all of these cities that have majority black populations. Well, at least Donald Trump wants to make them better. What do you want to do, Kamala Harris? What do you want to do, a podcaster, whoever that was? What have you done to make these communities better? Donald Trump wants to make these communities better. He did it when he was president, and he wants to do it again. There's nothing racist about that.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. The headline from the Daily Mail, Kamala Harris's media blitz could come with a Joe Rogan appearance and frantic plan to win over male voters. Yeah, did you hear this? So Joe Rogan, now, if you don't know who Joe Rogan is, he's I believe America's highest or most listened to podcaster. And what's interesting is if you think about it, because Joe Rogan has been attacked by the left. He is incessantly attacked by the left. They just simply don't like him. And they don't like him for a number of different reasons, which, to be candid, I'm not going to get into now. But I do just find it funny. I mean, CNN, if I remember right, CNN blasted him for comments he made about COVID, and he said some things about, you know what, I don't want to generalize the things that he is accused of saying, because I am a fan of Joe Rogan, and I can tell you that he is not anything like he is portrayed in the leftist media. He's just not. And so for Kamala Harris, who is obviously, clearly a leftist, progressive, to have to run to Joe Rogan to try to save her campaign, I think is just outstandingly funny. But here's what's interesting. Joe Rogan, you remember this story. This is MSNBC analyst Mara Gay, who says that young men are in crisis and they need to get therapy. And she says that they just listen to Joe Rogan and they're being converted to fascism. This is an actual conversation on MSNBC.
You know, I think men are in crisis, actually, in this country. I think that plays out different ways. And not all men are in crisis, of course. And not all men are just at home listening to Joe Rogan, being angry or being recruited to fascism.
I would like to know how many episodes of Joe Rogan that Mara Gay has actually listened to. I would like to know that. Because I guarantee you that if she's ever listened to Joe Rogan, she would not say the things that she's saying. Because there's nothing angry, and I'm air quoting, angry about Joe Rogan or the things that he says or the things that he talks about. But what I would love it if Joe Rogan, if Kamala Harris actually goes on Joe Rogan's podcast. I would absolutely love it if he would play that audio bite or that video for Kamala Harris and ask Harris if she stands by that comment that was heard on MSNBC. I would love for him to ask her about that. You know what the thing is, too? Is that, you know, when you are trying to find places to do an interview or you're trying to get someone to do an interview, for example, if you are CNN and you want to get Kamala Harris to do an interview, well, there are certain things that have to be agreed to, like, you know, for example, no follow-ups, no pushback. Don't ask me about this. Don't ask me about that. Don't frame a question a certain way. Those agreements are made, and then she goes, or the interviewer or the interviewee goes on to that interviewer's show or podcast, as long as the agreements are met. I don't see Joe Rogan making those agreements. He doesn't need it. He does not need the Kamala Harris interview at all. So I don't think he's going to agree to anything. That shows you how desperate Kamala Harris is. And by the way, Donald Trump is getting ready to go on Joe Rogan's show, too. Here's the rest of that audio bite.
Are just at home listening to Joe Rogan, being angry or being recruited to fascism. Some just need therapy, like we all do. I go to therapy. That's great. But I think we need to have a real conversation about that rather than allowing this kind of drift toward this faux masculinity that we see Donald Trump evincing.
I think old Mara Gay needs to go back to her therapist. So I want to make sure we all agree on this. So what the Democrats are saying, if you're Mara Gay, is that if you are going to vote for Donald Trump, then you are angry and you need therapy and you're drifting towards fascism. That's what Mara Gay says. Now, Barack Obama, the true leader of the Democrat Party, he says that if you're black and you're going to vote for Donald Trump, then you are misogynist and sexist. That's the very incredibly low opinion that the left has of the American people. That's the very low opinion that they have of the people who don't agree with them. Now, for me, if somebody didn't agree with me, I don't care. You can agree, you can disagree. The great thing about America is that doesn't matter. It's like I told the Uber driver that was throwing all of his political hatred at me the other day. I said, you know what? You do you, man. You vote for who you're going to vote for, and I'm going to vote who I'm going to vote for. And then, as I said, I dropped about 2.5 minutes of, talk show host thunder on him and told him why he, in my opinion, was wrong. And I wished him the best of luck. Now, this audio bite is a couple of days old, this, men in crisis thing. But, the more that I listen to it, the more that I would think, okay, so why are young men or men moving away from the Democrat Party? Well, let's remember that it was the Democrats that created the term toxic masculinity. Let's also not forget that men are constantly being demonized in America today, especially white, straight Christian men. Let's also not forget that there are some on the left that just considers men, frankly, predators, and they'll demonize them at every single turn. And as I said earlier, the folks on the left who always called Donald Trump supporters Nazis, and of course Trump is Hitler, a lot of those people are men. So the Democrat Party, they're sitting around and they're wondering, gee, I wonder why it is that the men are bailing. I wonder why all of a sudden Donald Trump is doing so well in the polling and Kamala Harris isn't doing well at all. Well, I just told you why. Because you're demonizing them. And please continue until November. Let's also not forget what Kamala Harris said about young adults.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories. And they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
Shrill. So, that Barack Obama, he's out there trying to get black men to vote for Kamala Harris as well, of course. Some actual policy plans have now come out from Kamala Harris. You want to hear them? Kamala Harris, the Harris-Walz policy. Kamala Harris will create an opportunity agenda for black men. She's going to provide 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $20,000 for black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. Now, I don't know what the and others is. I was trying to figure this out earlier on the program. I don't know what and others means or whatever. She wants to support education, training, and mentorship programs that lead to good paying jobs for black men, including pathways to become teachers. Another one, she wants to protect cryptocurrency investments so black men who make them know their money is safe. She wants to launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. And finally, she wants to legalize recreational marijuana and create opportunities for black Americans to succeed in this new industry. Now, one of the things that I'm going to say, like right off the bat, is that anything that focuses on race, I automatically don't like. If you want to provide 1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to $120,000, well, if you're going to do it for black entrepreneurs, you got to do it for white entrepreneurs too. Otherwise, it's just racist, right? Am I wrong on that? Support education, training, and mentorship. I'm all for this. I want it for everybody. But I suppose the question will be, will these things work? I just gave you the 5 big points that the Harris campaign, the Harris-Walz campaign is putting out there. These are the official policies. So number 1, will these things work? Number 2, will the people that she's trying to get to vote for her, will they realize that she had 4 years as a senator and pretty much 4 years as a vice president to do any number of these things? Did she introduce legislation for any of this? No? Okay. As a vice president, did she go to President Biden? Did they talk about maybe doing these kinds of initiatives at any time before 3 weeks before the election? No, she didn't. All right. Well, I said this earlier, and I got a lot of reaction. I'm going to repeat it. One of the things that she wants to do is launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact black men. Well, as I said earlier, you know what really does impact black men? Sadly, is homicide. Today, homicide is the leading cause of death among young black men. In about 80 to 90% of the cases, the black victim was killed by another black person. So I would say to Kamala Harris, how about you try to fix the crime problem by supporting and funding the police and not allowing bad guys to get out of prison early? The soft on crime policies of these cities, they're simply not working. The soft on crime district attorneys, it's not working. They're letting criminals back out onto the street. They're not prosecuting criminals, and so then they become more and more and more emboldened. That's what's happening. Guy goes in and he steals $999 worth of stuff. Cops aren't even called. You know why? Because everybody knows that they're not going to be charged. And so those criminals become more and more emboldened until they start killing people. So if you want to focus on illnesses that disproportionately impact black men, why don't you work on that homicide rate? And I say that out of a heart of love and compassion. You know what else would help the black men you're trying to get their vote, Kamala Harris? School choice. You've got all this support wrapped in with the teachers' unions. You really need to focus on giving these guys a great education. That's what you really need to focus on. Legalizing recreational marijuana. I thought that was a good one. You know how many people Kamala Harris, as a district attorney, put in jail because of marijuana? Let's just say it was a lot. So I thought that one was rather ironic. Vernon Jones is a guy, he's a state lawmaker out there in Georgia. He is also black, and he is one of Kamala Harris's biggest critics.
But as a black man, he did everything but address us. What he did, he berated black men, he rebuked black men, he even scolded black men, primarily because we will not fall in line and vote for Madam Lock Up Her Brother, Kamala Harris, because that's her record. As if black men are too stupid that we can't vote our self-interest, what's best for us, our pocketbook, our families. As if we've been immune to the past 3.5 years, as if we don't know that gas prices have been higher under Kamala Harris, food prices higher under Kamala Harris, interest rates on home mortgages higher under Kamala Harris, and runaway borders under Kamala Harris. But you know what? That's what the liberal white Democratic Party did. They dispatched Barack Obama out there to whip black men back on the plantation to vote Democrat. And you know, President Obama, he meant a lot to black people, but he didn't do anything for black people.
There you go. That is Vernon Jones. You can see the whole thing on my X feed. You can follow me on X or Facebook at Dan Mandis Show. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. Tim Waltz gave an interview, and it is nothing short of a train wreck. Wait till you hear the audio. It's coming up next.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.